Ladies and gentlemen, I wonder if we could all take our seats. We'd like to get started. Of course, if you need to get a refill of the coffee or any of the food, feel free to do so at any time. I want to welcome you to our 12th Ethics Summit, and we're very happy to see all of you here. We have a very interesting program, I believe, this year, and we will proceed with that pretty rapidly. But thank you, all of you, for giving up your morning to be with us. I also would like to acknowledge all the members of the Shared Ethics Advisory Commission and the Board of Delegates who are here. Could you stand for a moment? Members of the Shared Ethics Advisory Commission are all volunteers, and the Board of Delegates are composed of the elected officials from each of our member communities who oversee our finances. Also joining us again this year is the Inspector General of Indiana, David Cook, and I'll ask him to stand. Mr. Cook has been coming up to our summit for several years now, all the way from Indianapolis. He feels that this is an important enough event that his presence is worth his time. Well, let's begin. I ask you all to stand and we'll say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. Well, some of you have been coming to many of our summits. Maybe some are first-time attenders. And you might be asking, what is the Shared Ethics Advisory Commission, or as we call it, SEAC? It is open to membership of all towns, cities, and counties in Lake Porter and LaPorte counties. And what we ask any community wishing to join our commission to do three things: to pay very modest dues, sometimes only like $100 or $150. Secondly, to pledge to train their employees in ethical decision-making. And third, to agree to commit to training all of their employees. So again, the modest dues, the code of shared ethics and values, and training for ethics. And I believe our 23 member communities are on the screen right now. We'd like to have a lot more, and we're open to any community that wishes to join us. If your community is not listed there, please encourage your political leadership to join. So that's what SEAC is, but what does SEAC do? And so the next slide shows our major functions. Of course, this summit is one of the activities we perform every year, host every year. But our main purpose is to provide training for the employees of our member communities. And so you see listed there the various forms of training we provide. We arrange training for every single employee, and we use a train-the-trainer approach. So we ask each member community to identify trainers on their staff. We train them, and then we ask them to go back and train their coworkers. We have an exciting new curriculum that we have just developed last year in cooperation with a firm in California. We believe this is a unique product. They never had a program for ethics training for municipal employees. So now they have it. They're probably marketing it all over the country at our expense. But in any case, we're all happy to have it spread. Then we also do training, more focused training for department heads and board and commission members. So every employee, and then, which is a general ethics training based on our code of shared ethics and values, which is at your place. And we encourage you to take a look at that. And we also have the ethics guide, which is a shorthand explanation of ethical decision making, and it's very user-friendly. And then, in addition to all this training and the summit, we have the Candidates Ethics Action Pledge. Courtney, can you get the pledge up there? Well, that's not the pledge, but the pledge is very simple. It just asks a candidate to commit to ethical training on ethical decision making. We don't necessarily say they have to use our training, but we want some kind of training. And secondly, to support strong whistleblower protection. And so far, and we have at your place the list of candidates in case you can't see what we have here, up here, and are posted around the room, and also appearing in the Times of Northwest Indiana, a full-page ad announcing the candidates who have so far pledged to train their employees with ethical decision-making and whistleblower protection. We will be publishing that ad again, so if anybody hasn't signed up, there's still time. And you can see from our chart, I'm not going in the order Courtney thinks I should. We have a ways to go. We have only just over 50% of candidates in Lake County and Porter County, and very few in LaPorte County. We need to get that number up. It's a very simple commitment, a very simple pledge, and I can't understand why anybody would be opposed to committing to it. But as I say, there's time still to sign up. Now, so we've talked so far about what SEAC is, what SEAC does. What about all of the people here today? So we have some demographics. Let's see, that doesn't look like the first. Okay, well, all right. We have to modify our procedures on the spot here. So far as where we come from, we have, as you can see, a large preponderance of about 2/3 of our participants here today are from Lake County, a good portion from Porter County, and again, it's our biggest challenge to get exposure in LaPorte County. Okay, what do you got next? Okay, that's all the communities that are here today. We have 22 different communities represented today, and a special shout out to Cherville, who has the largest group of participants. And then the final slide is what we do. Where do we come from? What are our professions? And you can see between elected officials and public employees, 70% of the attendees here today are somehow government affiliated. And we think that's very good because this is our target market. We want public employees trained in ethical decision making, and we're going to, in a couple of minutes, have a very lively discussion from some real pros about the practical aspects of municipal ethics. So that's our story, and now I'd like to introduce the president of the Shared Ethics Advisory Commission, Chesterton. Chesterton attorney, Courtney, come on up here, Courtney Smith.
Thank you. So I have to look at my slideshow and see what page I'm on now. We're very on it today, right? So we have some fantastic panelists today. So I will introduce our panelists as I call them up. But over the last 12 years, we've held this summit and have welcomed many esteemed people to share with us their thoughts on ethics. And the feedback we've received from you, our summit attendees, along with making sure we serve lots of bacon, is to bring you speakers from our region and from our local governments, people who have dealt with ethics issues in our local and municipal communities. So we listened, and I'm happy and honored to introduce 2 past mayors and 1 current mayor from our region. So please help me in welcoming our summit panelists today. Lee Morris, the mayor of the city of LaPorte. Dan Klein, the past mayor of the city of Crown Point and the past SEAC president. And Brian Snedecor, the current mayor of the city of Hobart. Come on up, gentlemen. Okay, welcome to our panelists, and thank you for agreeing to join us today. Let's get started. First, I would like each of you to introduce yourselves and say just a little bit about yourselves and why you decided to join us today on the panel for the Ethics Summit. Lee, would you like to go first?
Sure. My name's Lee Morris. I'm a former mayor of the city of LaPorte. Delighted to be here with you and a strong advocate for the work that's being done by the Shared Ethics Advisory Commission. You can tell how effective my leadership is by the fact that LaPorte County has the smallest percentage of members. But believe me, we're working on it, and it's something that is so important. You know, one of the telling things for me in preparing for this session was I contacted several governmental offices and asked whether they had a code of ethics. And one of the telling answers was, gosh, that's a good question. I'd like the answer to that one myself. So that says we got to get ethics and codes of ethics and codes of conduct at a higher level. And I think Shared Ethics Advisory Commission is a very important part of helping to make that happen.
Thank you, Lee.
Brian Snedeker, 43 years of service to the city of Hobart. Yeah. I know I don't look that old, but 27 years on the police department, and then now 16 years, and I'll be finishing up at the end of this year. You know, I look around the room, and there's so many people that I look up to, mentors that I've learned along the way that have been really pillars of example to us as mayors. And you look around the room, and I just now looking and seeing all the people that have played a part in helping me form some of my leadership abilities. So I appreciate all your leadership, and this is a great group getting together to talk about ethics.
Thanks, Brian. Dan?
Good morning, everyone. Glad to be here. Been involved with Shared Ethics since its inception, since Cal Bellamy, along with then Ed Charbonneau, who was with the Good Government Initiative out of IUN, started this process. And myself coming from the private sector at AT&T in Chicago, and then going right into politics, it was night and day difference of how employees acted and their attitude towards what they thought they should do or what they shouldn't do. So when Shared Ethics started, I was very much excited to be part of it. And having been in the private sector, the public sector, and then the not-for-profit sector, I've learned there's problems in all of those areas, no matter where you're at, whether it's with employees or boards or commissions, you always have issues. And I think Shared Ethics can help guide some of those decision-making efforts into a positive venue to help the municipality and or the organization that you're with. So I'm excited to be here and glad you could join us as well.
Thank you, Dan. So I have questions that have been prefabbed, and then of course we will take time for the audience to ask questions after the panel is done. So what I'm going to do is I'll ask a question, and then any of the 3 of you can answer. If somebody else wants to piggyback, that's fine. We are anticipating this taking about 20-25 minutes for the panel, so please take your time in responding. How important is ethical decision-making to effective governing, and why do you feel that way?
I'll speak first to that, and I think one of the critical things is building trust in government. And when we are committed to high ethics and high codes of conduct, we encourage trust in our government. And I don't think it's any secret that trust in government generally has deteriorated significantly over the past few years. I think commitment to ethics training and the adherence to good codes of ethical conduct and performance is a critical factor in maintaining that trust. And you know, thinking about it from the standpoint of the leadership in government, when leadership makes a commitment to high codes of conduct and ethics, it spills down through the organization to employees. And conversely, when there's not commitment at the top to ethics and ethical conduct, it deteriorates employee morale and employee support for ethics as well. So this is, I think, a critical factor, more critical now than it's been in a long time because of the erosion of trust in government.
Thank you, Lee. Brian?
I would just echo what Lee covered. I think it's important that the community learns to know that they can trust the leaders, that they're not doing it for self-achievement or for personal gain, that they can trust that what their decisions are being made for the community is what's best for the community as a whole. I think also as a mayor or town manager, whatever the case may be, your example to your department heads and people that are going to be carrying out the missions, they need to know that you're making decisions based on the right reasons and not because you're going to try to benefit a certain sector or group, but you're doing it for what's best for the community as a whole.
So some transparency.
You know, I agree with both what they said, and I think what's so important now is the fact that with social media, somebody can take you down the hole in a heartbeat, whether it's true or not. And that's the sad part about social media is people tend to believe it, and it just makes me, it infuriates me because people might have great intentions. All three of us probably thought we were making the right decision at some given point in time, and somebody was always opposed to it. So how do you build that trust in somebody other than taking the high road and always facing people and saying, hey, I'm doing this for the right reasons, even though in the background out there through social media, you might be getting trashed.
I agree. So in essence, you know, this is something that we talked about when we were talking about what we were going to discuss on the panel, is when you're in office, how do you effectively address situations where there are ethical issues and they arise? Do you have a foundation and everyone knows what they're supposed to do when they report, or those kinds of things? What is it that happens when there is an ethical issue?
One of the things that I will mention that through the years, the city of Hobart did not have an HR, did not have a human resources. And I found that we have moved towards having a Department of Human Resources, and I would strongly encourage communities, big and small, if there's a way to have a human resources a department, please push towards that, because with the right person leading your human resources, your employees will build up a confidence that they can report things and be protected and not be singled out for reporting. You know, the kind of the days, you know, coming from the police department where you had, you know, that mentality of good old boys, you know, you look out for each other. We're way past that as a government. You have to be responsible for your actions. And if someone sees something being done that should not be, they should feel comfortable in being able to report it. And HR is a good way to do that because people can report it and not have fear of reprisal.
And to that, Brian, having HR is a great department to have, so people feel they can go there and be trusted. But you have to have the leadership at the top to instill in the HR department that they are going to be honest and fair, because you want your employees, and what I feel is a good way to challenge, or good way to figure out if you have this trust, is what if Shared Ethics put together an employee survey, and I'm not looking for more work for you, Courtney. but
I'm taking
I've
notes,
talked-
Dan. I'm taking notes.
I've talked to people in different municipalities in Northwest Indiana, and I said to them at one point, I said, how do you feel your work environment is? And in two different instances, they said, they didn't use the word caustic, but they said they don't trust anybody above them in the hierarchy from them to the mayor. Now, whether we like to believe it or not, it happens. I heard two people tell me that. So it's sad that it's out there, but it exists today. So the leadership starting at the top is so important, as Lee said initially, and it trickles down through all the department heads, but everybody's got to walk the walk. I mean, you got to be able to follow through, and that's important.
Not surprisingly, I agree with everything they said, but one other thing I think is really important, and that is to have a clear, concise, understandable, and objective conflict of interest policy, where you've thought through where are the possible conflicts of interest and how will we deal with them, and couple that then with good protection for the whistleblower. I think Brian has given us one avenue that we protect that whistleblower who sees that conflict of interest and raises it to be addressed. But make sure that we've got good protection for the person who identifies the problem and spotlights it so that it gets attention. But a policy, clear-cut policy where you've thought through what constitutes a conflict of interest, how will we deal with it, how will we prevent it from eroding the trust in our actions as the governing group and the employees of the governmental units.
And leading off of that, Lee, so what is the best way to handle an ethics situation if it arises and somebody does come to mayor, HR, whoever their reporting party is? How do you handle it? What is the necessary hierarchy of, or the situational plan?
Well, I come out of the healthcare environment, and in healthcare, we always said when you come to this ethical situation, make sure that you think it through and do what is right and best for the patient. And in this case, in the case of government, what's right and best for the people of our community or county or whatever unit of government you're involved with. But more important than that, I think you got to remember that you always deal with reality and people's perception of reality. And it's the appearance of misconduct that's just as important as actual misconduct. So make sure that when those complaints arise, you take them seriously. You make sure there's an avenue that they can pursue to get that addressed, and make sure there's good transparency and communication about what happens. And make sure you don't kill the messenger who's brought that problem to you. They've given you a favor, quite frankly. When somebody identifies a potential conflict of interest, they're really doing that governmental unit a favor by identifying either a real or possible conflict that can then be objectively addressed without fear of reprisal.
I think, along with what Leah said, based on the violation, whether it's a criminal violation, whether it's a department violation or working conditions, it also depends on if they're protected through certain union rights. But I think the main thing is once you acquire that information, do the homework of verifying whether there's a violation and do everything you can to protect whoever it is that reported it. There may be situations where you have to bring forward that person in order for testimony if it's a criminal violation, but I think you do the very best you can. And I see our prosecutor is here, Bernie. He is always good to work with us. If we have a question on how to go about an investigation for criminal, they're always great to work with and give some direction prior to it coming to a charge. So I think depending on what the violation is will determine your action, but the main thing is trying to protect whoever it is that reported it and get the evidence built up before you approach the violator.
Okay. Next question. What is the most worrisome aspect of the ethics violations? So when you see them, what is the most worrisome aspect?
Well, I would go back to the erosion of trust. It is so critical that people trust the government to do the right and best thing. And when you have that breach of conduct, breach of ethics, that you don't address effectively and objectively, you erode that trust even more. I think thinking through in advance, what are the ethical pillars that we're committed to as a government? And I'm one who believes that it would be important for governmental units to adopt a code of ethics which spells out what the real expectations are of employees, department heads, managers, and elected officials in terms of ethical conduct. Some areas have mandated every community to have a code of ethics. North Carolina, for example, has a mandated code of ethics for every unit of government in North Carolina. I really think that's something Indiana should take into account, and maybe even Northwest Indiana could do it because we need it.
And then would you say the grievance process also needs to be laid out at the same time? Then?
Oh,
'Cause you're
absolutely.
building a foundation, but you need to have follow-up.
Absolutely has to be integral to that we're not only committed to these, we want to know if there are questions or concerns, and we want you to know that there's an effective avenue to address those breaches and possible breaches and concerns.
Thank you.
And I'd like to go back to the slide that you had up earlier of which communities were part of the shared ethics. And that one. So how many communities are not on that slide right there? I think the Times newspaper should take a public stance on this and go to every one of those communities, to the mayor or whoever it is in charge, and say, why aren't you part of the Shared Ethics Advisory Commission in Northwest Indiana? How many people have gone to the jail in Lake County? And that's been talked about many shared ethics summits ago.
Or federal prison.
Okay, wherever. My point is, we need to put pressure on the communities that aren't on this list to get them to step up. Because I'd like to know, and we've talked, Cal and I have talked to some of those before, and it can't get them over the finish line to say, yeah, we'll do it. But the newspapers can help put pressure on those people to have them step up. So,
And the training is free. Free.
And effective.
Free. Okay. So has ethics training been helpful to you or your employees as a mayor? You guys are members of SEAC, so you've obviously participated in the training. Has it been effective for you, your community, your employees? Can you describe that?
I'll just quickly say yes. I believe it has. I believe it sends a message to your employees of your commitment to a high ethical behavior in the workplace. I think it also sends a message to the community that you, along with other communities, stand together on ethical behavior. I think, Northwest Indiana has taken a lot of black eyes through the years, and I think anything we can do to show that we're making strides to make sure our communities serve with high ethical behavior, I think is important. I think it has helped.
Dan, when you were mayor and they were participating in training, did you find it to be helpful? And what do you have to say?
absolutely. In fact, when I came, because I left AT&T in Chicago, and so it was a regulated entity. So we had certain policies we had to follow based on the federal government. So when I came to the municipal sector, I found there was no training, and that's when everybody reached out together and we started talking about shared ethics. And I thought there needs to be some guidance, because there was nothing. There was no HR person, there was no guidance. You know, it was a culture shock for me to come to a group of employees that had no direction. So shared ethics was a great way for everybody to learn what the parameters should be and what they should be shooting for. So yes, this was a godsend from my perspective.
Perfect.
I think it's really important, though, that if you do commit to the Shared Ethics Advisory Commission and you do provide the training, be serious about it. Because if it's done just for the sake of appearance, and to be able to say, check off that list, and then you don't follow it, it is very negative and detracts greatly from your performance as a governmental unit, in my opinion.
Well, and I think it negates our value. I think our value is affordable training for your municipal employees, and I would hate to see that it be implemented and then not actually followed.
And Courtney and Cal, the fact that you've now upgraded the training to something completely different and interactive, I mean,
All online.
it's come so far from when it first started out, so there's really no reason that anyone can't take this training from their desk anywhere.
Correct. Gentlemen, how would you rate the current ethics climate in Northwest Indiana?
I would consider it to be below par. We don't have a strong enough commitment to it. The Shared Ethics Commission has done great work, in my opinion. But the fact that you look at those statistics that Dan just cited a few minutes ago gives one great cause for concern. And I'm speaking from LaPorte County, but also from the region as well. We just don't have a strong enough commitment, in my opinion, to firm dedication to high ethical conduct and performance as a touchstone of government in Northwest Indiana. And I believe that the Shared Ethics Commission work gives us a great platform to build further on that, to try to make it a stronger commitment and more effective in supporting high ethical conduct and performance.
You said below par. I think of it, okay, I'm in the doctor's office. On a scale from 1 to 10, what's your pain? I think I'd rate this like an 8 in Northwest Indiana. It's a pain that there's not more people being able to be trusted, from that perspective.
Okay. And SEAC's ultimate goal is to be helpful in establishing an ethics culture in Northwest Indiana. What challenges do you see in establishing an area-wide ethics culture?
Well, first of all, gaining that stronger commitment. But secondly, probably thinking through a little bit more about whether a code of ethics for government is something that we ought to be pursuing, such as they've done in North Carolina, strong commitment in the state of Washington, several other places. Is that something we want to do? And number 3, what are the consequences of bad performance? Do we have any sort of enforcement procedure? Is there a way of making sure that when these problems occur that are not addressed, that's something that's really important and has to have attention? Or when it's been addressed ineffectively? Or when we see a whistleblower who loses their job because they were brave enough to bring the complaint? That enforcement procedure and the protection of the whistleblower, I think, are critical factors in that process.
I think the other thing is Northwest Indiana, as many communities as there are, Lake County alone, 19 communities. I think we've come a long way where communities now realize that geographical lines should not dictate policy, but I think there's still that challenge of being able to get everybody into the room and be on the same page. I think we've made a lot of strides. I got to say, I give Cal a lot of credit. He came knocking on my door several times before we joined the Shared Ethics. And I saw the integrity in this man by how he exemplified himself in presenting the plan and eventually won me over to joining the Shared Ethics. So I think we still have a lot of work ahead of us, as has been noted, with the amount of communities that still aren't on board. But I think we've made a lot of progress, and we just need to keep pushing ahead, forging ahead, communities sharing the values of this shared ethics to the other communities. So.
Dan?
One thing that comes into play in shared ethics, or shouldn't come into play, is politics. Whether you're a Democrat, a Republican, or independent, I don't care what you are, your beliefs should make you want to join and get your name on that list. And I think it takes peer pressure to get to those communities to say, hey, what would it take for somebody to go to a city council meeting at one of those communities that are not here and to stand up at the city council meeting and put the mayor on the spot and say, hey, why aren't you in the Shared Ethics Commission? And they'd be going, duh, 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 You don't want to put anybody in the spot like that, but you know what? I don't understand why people wouldn't want to be part of it. What's the downside to this? I just don't get it.
Well, what if you pay to be part of Shared Ethics and you don't even have a commissioner? So you're in it, but you're not. So that's a problem for us. We have communities that have paid, and they have not provided us a commissioner to report back to their community to say what we're doing and to give the information to their elected officials or their governing bodies, so they don't know what's going on in a committee or a commission that they're paying for that provides their ethics training. What do you have to say about that?
And they don't provide training for their employees.
Probably not if they're not coming to our meetings. All right. So considering SEAC is limited to just providing ethics training, would it be helpful in an inspector general type position would be created perhaps on a county-wide basis to investigate and recommend remedial action when ethics issues arise?
Well, it certainly should be explored, in my opinion. I'm not sure the inspector general concept is the right one, but if it isn't, then what is the right procedure for investigating and helping to make sure that ethical conduct is reinforced? Somehow there needs to be some type of procedure or thinking through of how do we go beyond training when we have problems, ethical problems occurring, to make sure that they're addressed and that there are consequences, quite frankly, to bad performance. There have to be consequences to bad ethical performance. So whether it's an inspector general concept or some other procedure, that needs to be looked at. In North Carolina, there's a process that it could have adverse effect in gaining state approval for funding. That can get attention of local government officials. So there are lots of different ways of doing it. Inspector General is certainly one of them that we should be looking at.
So like an enforcement body, we need somebody to be the enforcer.
Yes.
Okay.
I guess I would take an opposite approach. I think that you equip the communities to oversee their employees, and they need to be responsible for their employees. If it becomes a criminal nature, you have your prosecutor's offices that can give you advice as a community. But I think this is the whole idea of training communities to know how to handle their employees and the ethical high standards that we want to maintain as communities. So I might vary from that and not agree with the inspector.
I think the concept is a great concept, and I think there needs to be people that can, if somebody's going to make an unethical decision, there needs to be some consequences to it. And right now, there are none, and there's no way of enforcing that. So yes, I believe there needs to be some type of person at the top that designates what the ethics rules should be, but how do we get there? I mean, this is the beginning of that, but where do we go next?
The gray area between criminal and civil, where is it a crime or is it suable, but is it just ethically wrong? So it's without the court system, what happens, what's the first line of defense kind of thing? I get what you're saying. So thinking more broadly, how would you visualize the quality of life in Northwest Indiana in 10 to 20 years?
Well, I think it depends a lot on how we approach the very situation we're talking about here. Because government, a trust in government is such a critical part of building the quality of life in a region, a community, or whatever. And it sets the tone. I think Northwest Indiana, quite frankly, is in a remarkably positive position if we do the right and best things going forward. Stars are aligned in so many ways for Northwest Indiana, but we've got to work on government, and the appearance and actual ethical performance of government in our region is a critical factor in making sure that quality of life is realized by the residents of Northwest Indiana. It detracts from it, quite frankly, when we don't do that.
I think the future's bright. I think we have a lot of exciting new leadership coming through the system in our communities. I think there's a lot of positives. I think our continued connections as we have with the Chicago market, you know what I think is probably everybody in the room probably could echo is that, you know, your community takes on a really good project or makes a really solid decision to do something, and then after the meeting you go home and you do that dreaded check social media and see what Facebook has to say about your community, and then, you know, all the negatives, and you think, man, why can't people understand that we're trying to do the right things for the right reasons? But you always have the detractors that will try to tear you down, try to keep the community from advancing in a positive way. But I think as long as we stay focused on the mission before us, we can't go wrong. And I think we're poised as Northwest Indiana to really do some great things with the double tracking and some of the things that we're seeing that's going to make this a positive area. I'm excited about the future of Northwest Indiana. I really am.
I think we live in a great community. I mean, proximity to Indianapolis, Milwaukee, Michigan. I love living here and being able to go wherever I want in a 2 or 3 hour drive. So we have to be persistent with our intentions so that we continue to build. Lee talked about the double tracking. There's so many things happening. How do we keep that momentum going? And it takes all of us in this room to say, hey, this is a great community, a great area. Let's keep plugging forward. 2 steps forward, maybe 1 back, but we're eventually going to get there, and we can make this an even greater area than we have today.
And I love the idea of forward motion while still having integrity. You can't do the pay to play. You can't do you have to have integrity. Yes, we want growth, but you have to do it with integrity, and you have to do it the right way. Okay, so thank you very much, gentlemen, for answering the questions provided by the SEAC. Now we're going to open it up to audience questions, and I have one at this first table right here, Julie.
Rich Undercroffler from Highland. As the president, are you like an executive director, or you have one? And
Oh, for me?
second question, yes.
Oh, as president, I am actually the president of the Shared Ethics Advisory Commission, which makes me the, not director, but leader of our executive committee. But we are actually run by the Joint Board of Delegates, which is elected officials. So we are volunteers for the communities, and we report back to our communities. So we are just more the governing body of the volunteers versus the
At a
Joint
time
Board
in
of
the
Delegates,
past,
which runs
there
us.
was a acting executive like Lloyd Rowe. Do you have someone like that now?
I don't understand the question. Acting executive?
Yes.
Our Joint Board of Delegates president, Janice, would probably be our executive. She and
Okay.
I work together to make sure everything runs smoothly between the two.
And so now that
Entity.
Michael Griffith's not around,
Oh,
as clerk treasurer in Highland, who manages your money?
Mark. What's Mark's last name? He's the clerk treasurer of Highland.
Thank you.
One more, Julie, over here.
The Adam Golikowski, Highland. The theme of the questions to the panel today has largely been on the subject of trust, which is a great subject. My question is for each of the panel members, how do you personally, or how do you recommend for other leaders, how do you personally give a specific example of how you personally build trust when working with the people that report to you?
Well, I think first, from my standpoint, first of all, making sure that there is a clear understanding that there is a strong commitment to proper conduct and high ethical performance. And by walking the talk, by making sure that in our appearance, we always are supporting that as well as in our actions. And there's no question about it. When people in the organization see the folks at the top really paying attention to those matters and demonstrating that commitment, it spills right down through the organization. So that's what I like to do. I like to make sure that it's clear that that's where our commitment is. When I was in the hospital, it was the commitment to the patients. When I'm the mayor, it's the commitment of what's right and best for the people of LaPorte. Whether it's right and best for me, that's beside the point. It's right and the best for the people of LaPorte, and that's where our priority needs to be.
And I would say as a constituent, I'm looking for that transparency. So from the mayoral aspect, yes, you need to be forthright, but if you're not transparent with me and there's closed doors meetings and there's things going on behind the books or behind the curtain like the great and powerful Oz, I don't feel like I know what's going on, and that leads me for distrust. So I would say as a constituent, I'm looking for open door policies. I'm looking for transparency in your statements where it's not, oh, let's not look under door number 2 or whatever. I don't appreciate when I find out something's happening after the decision has already been made and it's never been put in front of the council or put in front of the committee that's supposed to, have a feedback period or a open comment period. So that, I think, is a big deal. Brian?
I think that's an excellent question to ask, because since becoming mayor, I've realized how much I don't know. Honestly, a lot of times the mayor gets credit for things that really, yeah, maybe he's the captain of the ship or she's the captain of the ship, but the people doing the work are the ones below you that are carrying out the task with their departments. I think one of the biggest issues about trust is that it's a two-way street, and you have to trust the people that you're telling to do something. I found out that a lot of times I was willing to change my mind because I realized I didn't have the best solution. But when you call your department head in and they give you a reason to change your direction, and it's a good reason, you need to be reciprocal to that. You need to realize that whether you're a mayor, town manager, or whatever job title you are, don't think you know it all. I found out many times that I didn't have the best solution, but when you surround yourself with good people, that's when you'll get the right solutions. Surround yourself with good people.
I think transparency is so important that when I first stepped into the role as mayor, we would have public sessions where people could ask questions of me. Because I wanted to be able to convey to them and have them feel comfortable in asking me questions and get different viewpoints of things. As Brian and Lee said, you might have changed your mind at some point, but you went in thinking you had the right decision, but somebody else said, hey, did you look at it this way? And being able to do that with your constituents is one thing, but also sitting down with your employees or your department heads or the guy who fixes the cars in the vehicles area, going to him and saying, hey, well, what's going on? Just having a conversation with them, knowing that you're not up here, you're willing to step down and be at the same level. It sends a message to the employees that you're no better than they are, and you're one of them. And I think that's so important that people see that of a leader.
I agree. I think even in the private sector, you have to know what every person's job is and be able to do it on your own to appreciate their workload and know what kind of work ethic it takes to do that job. So it's no different in running a city. Next question. We have one over here. Julie? Got one right here. You got one right there? Okay, go ahead.
Hi, Shirlene C. Olson, Crown Point Mayor candidate. I took and discovered this platform or your organization in January. I went online and I took the lesson that you had. At the end of it, I did get a chance to see that I completed the program or the training that was on site. However, it did not allow me to print out my certificate. Has that process been fixed?
I am unsure. Julie, do you know?
No, I mean, we have an issue with user count and opening it up to the public, so we're trying to control the training through Train the Trainers for each community. So you're a little unique. You went on and did it yourself, which is great, but we don't have the wherewithal for every citizen within Northwest Indiana to do that. So anyone here who's interested in taking the training, you just need to talk to your community, and there should be a trainer assigned, and we're working with all those trainers to get them trained up. And we're really focused on in-person training like this. We like the idea of having discussion and dialogue, not just having it online.
Julie is our communications director, so she works closely with Les, the man who runs our website, which is why I had no idea we couldn't print certificates. But again, part of our training program is buying that package. And so we have it where we can do individual training and give the certificates ourselves, but we can't get the certificates from the actual company without paying for each user, right? Is that what I'm understanding?
We're a little bit different because if you're a corporation that has online ethics training for your community and you're tracking it through a training management process, that's a little different. We can't training manage all of Northwest Indiana. That's really hard. And each of your communities deals with your training in a different way. So what we're trying to do is offer this new training through the train the trainer process, and then sitting with your trainers offering your employees training. So if you have any questions or you want to understand that more, it's a little confusing, please stop me after.
Yeah. And Julie, we had a question at this table up here, the gentleman in the navy suit.
Terry Quinn from Sherrville. My question is regarding the employment process, and what steps do you take or recommend to avoid patronage?
Well, what a good question.
I'd like the answer to that myself. Isn't that what somebody said to you about the ethics?
I don't think there's any one approach that is necessary. I think the important thing is to think it through. For your community, for your whatever unit of government that's involved, what is the most transparent, fair, and equitable way to do that? And it may not be the same for every unit of government. So it's something that you ought to devote time and attention to at the community or a governmental unit level. What's right and best for us to make sure that we protect the people who bring the concern, and number two, that the concern is addressed fairly and equitably and objectively, and number three, that there are consequences, either positive or negative, to the results of that investigation or consideration, and that's communicated and understood. That whole process then works for the benefit of the quality of the government and as it's seen by its constituents. That's best I can do.
Yeah, I would just echo that. I've tried to stay away from hiring. You have the police department that has their testing procedures, the fire department that has their fire commission. The other departments, generally what I do is have the department heads do an interview process along with HR, and then they come back to me and say, this is the candidate that we feel is best suited to be hired, and then I will process that employee. But I try to stay away from the front end of the hiring because you do want to stay clear of patronage type stuff. I even, as a former police chief, when I became mayor, I always told the police chief, I want nothing to do with towing services. Because anybody that knows, has been with the police department, knows how patronage that can become in the wrong way. And I've always stayed clear. I tell the police chief, that's your decision on how you conduct your towing services. Believe me, that can get you in a lot of trouble. So just stay clear of any of the patronage perceived, even hirings or vendors doing business with the city. Stay clear of it.
And I think it's harder in the smaller towns when you're talking about that towing service stuff, because I know there aren't a lot of tow companies in small towns, so they're gonna get all the tows, and then it looks one way or another, but there might only be one towing service that comes to your community. You know, I don't know. So it's a difficult transparency. You have to be transparent.
I think a patronage type decision like that is a way to lose trust in your employee base and to not be, and to be perceived as the guy behind the curtain making the calls. And that's the worst thing I think you can do from an employee morale perspective. Because when people see that happen, or they see somebody gets hired that has no credentials to be in the spot that they should be in, that's the worst thing you can do in my mind.
Thank you. This was a great panel. Do you have one more question, or can we move on? Okay, perfect. I appreciate you gentlemen for showing up and for taking the time to talk to us. We're going to move on to the case studies. So part of what we do at ethics training is provide some case studies for some active dialogue in some scenarios. So we want to show you what we do when we do training so you can see why the in-person training is so much more important than just doing the videos online. I do understand that many of you might be going to the forum as well in Michigan City, so we will try to wrap things up by 10:30. That gives us an hour and 5 minutes so that you can get over to the forum if that's where you're headed after this. So please try to stay for the case studies. You'll find on your tables a packet that contains a variety of ethics case studies. Today we're going to review the first 3 cases. The 4th case in the packet is for you to discuss with your colleagues at another time. So let's get started with the ethics case study number 1, titled Keep On Truckin'. Please take a few minutes to read the case study and then discuss it at your table, and then we'll ask some of the tables to share their thoughts on the case. As you're reading through the case study, please keep an eye out for what you believe the ethical issues are. That's where we're going to start. What ethical issues have you identified? This is a great time to get a coffee refill or grab another plate of food. The food will be out. Does any table need more time to discuss? Just raise your hand. Okay, let's begin. Every year, large manufacturers of wide variety of machinery host a national convention. This year, the convention is scheduled for Chicago's McCormick Place, an easy drive from Northwest Indiana. The town will be making several major purchases this year, so the town council decided to pay the registration fee for the 2 employees who will be involved in designing the bids for the largest purchases. Each registrant is automatically eligible for prizes awarded randomly on the convention's last day. As it happened, both of the town's employees were winners. One employee won a wrench set. The other employee won the grand prize, a Ford F-150 pickup truck. Both employees were delighted, obviously one more than the other. When they returned to work, the employee who won the truck was proud to show it off and announced, "This is just what I needed. My old Silverado has had it." Can these employees keep their prizes, or do these items belong to the town? The town. What do we think? Any table want to take a stab at it? Yeah, you want to talk about the truck?
Yes, I will.
What,
Okay.
say who you are and where you're
Oh.
from.
My name is Sandra Davis, and I represent the town of Schererville
Thank you.
on the SEAC Commission. The question was that an individual went to a conference, and it was paid for by their company. So that particular individual won a prize, and the question is, should he keep the prize? A nice truck, very appetizing to keep, or should it go back to the company? So you have to think about it. First of all, the company sent him.
It's the town.
The
Yeah,
town.
we want to make sure we include that
Town.
it's a municipality.
Okay, thank you. The town sent him to this particular conference. They paid for the ticket for him to go, the registration fee. So therefore, he is a representative of that particular town. So therefore, the truck belongs to the person or the entity or the town that sent him. And that's the conclusion that we came to.
That's your table's conclusion. Did anyone come up with a different conclusion? Go ahead.
Charlene C. Olson, Crown Point, Indiana. Well, I know we're all in Indiana, right? So we came up with a different scenario. One of the things that really stuck out to us initially was the decision from the town council and how they did pay for the registration fee. And then the other thing is that one employee got a wrench set, the other employee did get the truck. However, we feel that the truck should go back to the company because this is a very good example of how ethics is addressed within a company, because one thing it does is it creates ambiguity amongst the employees because this one person got the truck. The other thing is how they went about it. You had one person that had to pay for the registration fee who didn't get anything, and then you had the company who decided to pay for the 2 employees to represent. So I think there should have been some type of rules that said that if we do pay for your fee to attend that event, you are not obligated to win the prizes or participate in the prizes if you win it. And that would squash all of that. That was our decision.
So you mean that the truck would go back to whoever donated the truck? Okay. How many of you believe the truck should go back to whoever donated the truck? Okay, how many believe the truck should go to the town? Okay, I don't know what the right answer is, obviously, that's why these are gray areas. However, we do not believe that the employee gets to keep the truck, correct? So whether the town keeps it and it becomes a town truck and they put a snowplow on it and it's just the town snowplow now, or if it is going back to the car dealership and maybe there's a cash prize and that goes to the town, I don't know. Or they sell the truck and then they get cash to go to the town, not sure. So either way, we believe that the employee is not keeping the truck. So when we think of gifts or prizes, what do you believe is necessary for your town about gifts and prizes? Is there a set of rules or some type of guideline for these things? Like, what is too much? Are you the garbage man who's allowed to take the $5, $20 gift cards for gas at Christmas? Are you the horticulturalist who can take home the plants that have been pulled out and they were going to get rid of them anyway? What are the rules about gifts? Does anybody have anything they want to add about gifts? As long as you can eat it or drink it, it's okay. So if I buy you a handle of Tito's, it is absolutely fine. Is that what you're saying? I'm just asking. You said eat or drink. It's okay. Can I buy you a handle of Tito's? It's the very large size of Tito's vodka. Can I buy you a handle of it? Okay. So I think there's still gray areas and no matter what you say, right? So I wouldn't want to say that I'm accepting a handle of Tito's from anybody as a municipal employee, but it would be okay if I got a Starbucks coffee? Is that what you're saying? It needs to be smaller? Yeah, maybe there needs to be a dollar value set. Julie?
Right, that's what we just spoke of at our table. Maybe there should be a dollar value to it, under so much or not over so much, and perhaps we should always have to claim it.
Yeah. Well, and here's something funny. So I'll give you a scenario in the private sector. I was appointed as a successor representative in an estate because I'm an attorney, right? So I have to do a lot of paperwork with Chase Bank. This one very nice teller has been working with me for 3 months. I'm telling you, 20 hours in the last 3 months she's been dealing with me. I took her a Starbucks gift card for $10. I got it back in the mail yesterday. She's not allowed to accept the $10 Starbucks gift card. So they obviously have a set of rules that probably most municipalities don't even have. So they've gone above and beyond and said, no gifts, zero, zilch, nothing. Now, if I brought in the Starbucks and it was hot and in my hand and set it in front of her, I don't know if she could have drank it, but she wasn't allowed to take the $10. I didn't go exorbitant. I just wanted her to be able to get one drink. $5 doesn't get you a drink at Starbucks anymore, FYI. So I got her a $10 card, and she sent it back to me in the mail. And she wrote a little note, sorry, I cannot accept this. But I put it on her desk. I didn't hand it to her in front of anybody, so hopefully no one would see it, so I know I was doing wrong in the first place. But it's private sector, right? Okay, so anything else that you want to add about gifts? And then how do we set those policies? Who is the person who's supposed to set those policies? So if we're in, we have the town council, who sets their policies? Who oversees that? Does the town council set their own policies and then it's, what they want and whoever's in the town council at that given time, or who sets those policies? That's something that needs to be addressed probably, correct? How many of you think that there are policies in most of your municipalities about gifts? I don't know. I might go find out. So that's a good question. Are there any other ethical concerns? We got one back in the back.
Hi, I'm Carrie out of Recycling Porter County.
Whoop, whoop. Recycling Porter County.
One of the big concerns that I flagged, and I have it underlined on my paper, is that the 2 employees are going to be involved in designing the bids. So if that truck and that bid, that means that's a favorable appearance, looking like, oh, that's a great vendor I'm gonna be reaching out to, because either we gave the truck back, we got a donation, we did something. Those people designed in the bid, that's screaming ethical violation to me personally.
I agree. Did anyone else flag that? Just 1 or 2 other tables. You need to pay attention to how it appears. Remember, Lee was up here talking about appearances are sometimes more difficult to address than what is actually happening because of the transparency, right? So even if they had the cheapest bid, you took their truck, now people are gonna think, based on appearances, that there was some kind of pay to play, right? So you have to be cautious of appearances. Any other ethical issues that you guys flagged? No? All right, let's move on to case number 2. It is called Thanks So Much. You were moving it already, weren't you? Thanks, Joe. Do any tables need more time to discuss? Raise your hand. Okay. Thanks so much. Jane is the office manager at a satellite office of one of the county's elected officials. The elected official visits the office from time to time and carefully reviews reports Jane submits on the operation of that office. Even so, Jane pretty much runs the office as she pleases. Jane is very flexible about employees' start and finish times and lets employees have time off when they say they need it for medical or other appointments. These perks are extended to her entire office staff, but 2 staff members, Bobby and Carol, have added perks. For example, they frequently join Jane for lengthy lunch breaks. These 2 also strongly encourage, their coworkers to contribute generously to what they call Jane's Appreciation Fund. Can we just change this to Courtney's Appreciation Fund? Whatever is collected, which is a significant amount, is presented to Jane at the office's end-of-year party. Bobby and Carol are encouraging the whole staff to urge Jane to run for the elected position, which will be opening next election because the incumbent is term limited. As Carol says, let's keep a good thing going. Office morale is high, and the staff often mentions on their social media sites how much they enjoy Jane's flexible management style. Meanwhile, these posts are causing some backlash from other county employees who are complaining on their sites about these special benefits. What are some of the ethical issues? We have somebody in the middle. Everything. Well, it can't be everything. It can't be everything. Having high morale is not bad.
Every single thing about this screams unethical.
Yes.
The fact that, I mean, there's one thing about allowing your employees to have a flexible schedule. If they have a medical appointment, maybe they can take short lunches for a little bit to make up that time. That's fine. That's a wonderful thing, I think, for, to allow people to do that. But everything else about this, the appreciation fund, no. the long lunches, no. Now, all of that is unethical, in my opinion.
So let's start with talking about an honest day's work. You brought that up first. So yes, having flexibility to allow your employees to go to a doctor's appointment, take their kid to the orthodontist, whatever it might be, those are the days where somebody comes in early and leaves early, or comes in late and leaves late, or makes up time at another time, correct? You need to be putting in the amount of hours that you're being paid for, or you need to be punching out, correct? That's what we all agree to. Favoritism, did we mention that? There's 2 people who get special perks. How's that feel? Courtney feels sad. She doesn't have special perks. So the special perks that are afforded to 2 people, even though everybody else is allowed to do things like leave for things, they're not taking an hour-and-a-half lunch. Now, it didn't say in here that they were having alcohol, but I can only imagine that these 3 women going out for lunch was probably a wine and dine or a margarita on Taco Tuesday. So we have to pay attention to that too. We're not doing stuff on the clock or not punched out that is inappropriate, right? And what about the investment into Jane's Appreciation Fund or pushing for political advocacy inside a government office? How many people have policies where they work that absolutely you must not actively campaign for people you're working with or anywhere in the vicinity of your building? You should all be raising your hands. You should all be raising your hands. If you are in the public sector, it is absolutely inappropriate to be advocating or campaigning for one of your coworkers. It is just not okay. And you should never feel the pressure to advocate. You don't know that these people aren't on the opposite spectrum politically. You don't know that these people are just not even politically affiliated and have no desire to be engaged in any type of politician work or any type of political racketeering. I won't call it racketeering, but it sounds like it when you're telling people they gotta pay to the appreciation fund. So that is very concerning. And making people give their own money so that we can give money to our boss at the end of the year for Christmas presents or for appreciation gifts, any of that, inappropriate. Absolutely inappropriate. Now, what do you do when you want to go in on a gift for somebody's birthday? Can you go around the office and say, we're all gonna go in on a gift, do you want to? Is that appropriate? Is this a gray area? Is it not? Are we having a baby shower and everybody wants to go in for one gift? Where is the fine line? Does anyone have anything to say about that?
everybody would have to be doing it.
So you have to do it for everybody's birthday, not just certain people.
Right.
What if only certain people get pregnant? Men don't get pregnant? What if there's a baby shower? I mean, I'm being serious. There are so many things that one section of your group can do that others cannot. I mean, I don't want to be inappropriate, but we don't have a big party for men for pregnancy. Like, this is not, we're not throwing men's showers. Maybe they do those diaper dad things at your office, but most of the time it's for women. Yes. Hold on, right here and then you.
You just donate anonymously.
So donate anonymously.
Yes.
To a fund and everybody can buy one gift? Okay, what were you gonna say?
Same thing, I was going to agree with that, because if you single out the person who doesn't give, then that's just as bad as, making, letting them know who did give.
So it's an anonymous donation for the gift. Everyone signs the card, but it doesn't matter who paid. Is that what you guys are trying to say? Do you guys agree? What if you just don't do it at all? If you want to go to a baby shower, you got to go on your own. I don't know what particular rules each office has for those things, but I know the political is an absolute line. This is more gray area, right? So there are gray area ethical issues that need to be discussed within your departments. What about social media? Nobody brought that up. Comments? We're coming with the mic.
Hi, Megan Stoner from Porter County. I'm actually writing on the back of my paper that social media and ethics really needs to be addressed. It's pretty evident today that there's a lot of questions around social media and what the ethics are. And in this particular case study, the idea that people are sharing on social media what their inner working departmental regulations are, operations are, is a huge red flag. That's a huge problem. And so making sure that you have social media guidelines within your departments and within municipalities and for elected officials, I think is extremely important in how we deal with the public and how the public deals with those of us in governmental positions.
Keep the mic for a second. So if you have social media guidelines, who is the enforcer? So say you're in Porter County, whatever department you're in, and you find out someone in your department has posted an inappropriate picture about making fun, like a meme, making fun of someone at your place of employment. How do you resolve this? If that person never even saw it, but you saw it or someone brought it to your attention, so it's not even the person it's about, what are your procedures? And is that laid out?
I've been at this month with Porter County I've been here 1 month. I honestly cannot speak to what Porter County has in place right now. But I can say personally, I think that should go to human resources. It should be a human resources issue to deal with. It should absolutely be brought to the attention of human resources. And I don't really care who's made the inappropriate comment. It really needs to go to human resources, commissioners, et cetera. And I think there should be a checks and balances system in place to ensure that if an elected official is the one saying something negative, that they're not the only ones monitoring that social media policy.
Okay. And we have a question in the back corner, Julie. And Julie Wendorf, you can go first.
I think that there's a line between social media, you can't get around it, but I think there's a line between professional and personal pages. So I would have a person from my IT department be sort of the monitor on that, because we do, at my office, the Calumet Township Trustee's office, we do have a page where we post all things related to our office. There's nothing personal on there. By the same token, I have my own personal page, but I would never post anything office on there, so the two aren't mixed up at any time.
So
go ahead.
So what you're saying is, as far as the trustees, so if you guys are posting, our NIPSCO,
We post minutes from
Yeah,
our meetings.
or
we post
if you're ready to
board
start
meetings.
rolling out your winter NIPSCO
Right,
relief or
right.
whatever, but you could share that on your own personal because you didn't create it.
I could.
But if you were on your own personal, you wouldn't talk about any inter-office workings with the trustees.
would
You
not.
wouldn't say, "Oh, we had cake today for so-and-so's birthday."
I would not. And I would not talk about anybody in particular as well. And then that is the part I think where HR would become involved. If there was something from someone's personal page about another employee or a coworker, that could be the gray area that how do you really, because we have signed agreements about social media within the office, and we don't do it on office time as well.
You sign your procedures as part of your onboarding.
Yes.
Okay. Julie.
So I'd like to chime in on social media. That's what I did in the military my whole entire life, cybersecurity. I was the one that monitored the whole entire system, and I don't want credit for this. I'm just sharing my experience. I will tell you that social media at any organization should have a policy put in place across the board. There also should be a talented person, not someone at random that thinks that they want to do it, or it really takes someone that has certification to actually know what to look for and squash it right away. It should be separated, and it should not be tolerated within the organization, because isn't there a thing called best business practices and laws and regulations, what you can share and what you can't? And so when you take and add people to social media, that adds there, that actually gives words feelings that really shouldn't be, because it's the human that gives those texts and those communications, those feelings. Whereas if you have a policy put in place on how they handle it, it's up to the organization. I wouldn't even say HR. I would say the communications and IT department that's totally separated, so they can make conscious decisions, and there won't be a my friend did this or someone else said this, and just cut through the chase and keep it clear.
Thank you. Any other comments? Okay, we're going to move on to our case study number 3, tools and wheels. This is our last case study. Does anyone need more time to discuss? Okay. Tools and wheels. It has been common practice for the last 20 years for employees to make personal use of the city's large stock of hand tools. The then supervisor had a simple rule: bring it back the next morning undamaged. Occasionally, an employee forgot to return the tool the next day, or there was some damage to the device. The supervisor usually overlooked what he considered minor infractions. Upon the supervisor's retirement, a replacement was hired from a larger city who introduced himself to the staff as a no-nonsense kind of guy. In that vein, he announced that personal use of city equipment would no longer be permitted, but old habits die hard. While less frequent than before, some employees continued to borrow tools. When caught, they were berated by the supervisor at all the staff meetings, and a notation was added in their personnel file. Employees became increasingly disgruntled, considering their new boss to be inflexible and not very nice. Even as morale slipped, he stood his ground. The supervisor had a town-owned car that he parked in front of his house each night. One morning, he found that one of his tires had been slashed. He reported the vandalism to the police chief, who noted that there had been a rash of cases citywide where air had been let out of tires, but he thought maybe only one other case of tire slashing. Convinced that one of his employees was responsible, the supervisor called an all-staff meeting and announced that if vandalism was committed against him again, he would find that employee and dismiss him on the spot. No HR niceties. You'll be out the door just like that, snapping his fingers. So let's talk about some ethical issues here. I think the first one is snapping his fingers. It's like treating someone like an animal. All right, we have one back here.
Right responses, wrong approach, and implementation.
Okay, so let's delve into that a little bit further. Who can tell us what was inappropriate to begin with, and then the new guy coming in is trying to implement the actual rules that should be followed? So let's talk about that to begin with. So what about the old supervisor? Let's talk about him. Anyone? I think the old supervisor had his own ethical violations, correct? All right.
Well, the first thing I would like to say is that culture is hard to change.
Culture is hard to change.
Yes, once you start a procedure and now you want to change it, it takes a long process to get that corrected. But the first supervisor, I felt lending out company equipment, that in itself is an issue. And the reason I say that is because now you have company equipment that's going outside of the town, and if something were to happen during that period of time that that particular employee is using that equipment, now it becomes a company issue because that equipment belonged to the company. So allowing employees to take equipment home for personal use in itself can create an issue.
Now, I have a question to play devil's advocate. What if you had policies regarding that? You signed the hand tool out, you brought the hand tool back. If something happened to the hand tool, you were charged for it, you had to replace it, whatever the case may be. Is that still an ethical violation?
But what if it involves someone being injured?
Well, these are hand tools, not electrical tools, so I'm hoping that nobody's injured themselves like with a hammer, besides hitting their thumb like every man does when they're hammering in a nail, and I should say man or woman, but most women are extra conscientious about that. Okay. So we don't want to break a nail. No, I'm just kidding. What about that? If there are policies in place, how many believe that that's still an ethical violation? If you have a policy in place where they can take equipment home and bring it back, is that a violation? We got somebody in the back. You still think it's an ethical violation because it belongs to the town? Yeah. And that's my question. Is it a gray area or not? Many people here are saying it's absolutely fine. Do you believe if there's policies, it's okay to take city equipment home and bring city equipment back? What's the answer? You say yes? As a former mayor, would you have allowed maintenance people to take things home and bring it back the next day with policies in place? If, so it's a compensation of the employee to be able to borrow and bring back as long as there's policies, and if something happens, they're responsible for it as long as it applies to everyone, is what Lee says, as long as everyone can do it. So not just the maintenance people, but anybody could come and borrow those tools? The policy must be clear. How many agree with Lee that if the policy is clear, it's not a violation? No. How many don't know?
No.
Okay.
Courtney?
Yes.
If I understand the municipalities, everything in that town belongs to the people. Doesn't belong just to the employees. So if you're going to loan something to an employee,
You have to also
you
loan
should
it
be
to any
able to be
constituent.
ready to loan it to a person of that community because their tax dollars is what's paying for that.
How many agree with that? What about their cell phone? I'm letting an employee have a cell phone. Does that mean that I have to let any person have a cell phone? I think it's a gray area. It's hard. It's a conduct of their business. Okay, so, but what if they get to take it home with them? Most people use it for personal use. They don't buy their own cell phone after that. Okay. All right. Then what about the changing of the culture? Let's talk about the new supervisor. Is he just being hard-nosed and saying no, 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 and not coming up with a policy? Is he right? Is he wrong? Right need, wrong approach. So, Lee, tell me what you think he should have done. We got a mic.
It needs to gain the support of the employees to understand why a change is necessary, and let them feel a part of the decision-making process rather than being dictated to and harassed.
Okay.
It's reasonable to make a change, but people have to know and understand why a change is important to the organization and the mission of the organization.
Okay. So once he explains the policy and they're still not following the policy, is what he's doing by berating them and yelling at them and putting something in their personnel file appropriate?
In this particular case, the new person coming in has to recognize the past practice. And when this particular borrowing is the past practice, and there's been no complications, no one's out of line, it seems to work well, then more than likely his decision to change that and make it different is upsetting the apple cart. He should let that system run itself until it hurts itself, and then change could be made then.
Even if the system is unethical?
Excuse me?
Even if the system is unethical? Some people are saying it's unethical to be able to take home those tools.
Well, if it's a policy, then it's ethical because the company made it a policy.
Well, but we don't have a policy in place, I don't think. It's an unwritten policy, correct? He had a simple rule, bring it back the next morning undamaged. It doesn't say that there's a policy. So my concern
Right,
is
that is a past practice.
past practice.
And again, that past practice is the policy.
Okay. All right, go ahead.
So the gentleman said past practice, but the thing about it is a policy, if I understand it to be correctly, it's something that's in writing that everyone is aware of the change that this new employee or new boss is encountering. But the rest of how he handled everything was totally uncalled for because now he's using power that he really doesn't have. He's abusing the position. But there should be a policy put in place and allow the employees the opportunity to adjust.
Okay.
I think I recall when Mr. Bellamy brought this whole ethics commission together and he talked about East Chicago and alleys and things that practices that people were used to.
Correct.
And so we're trying to change a mindset. And even though it was a policy that people were used to, it wasn't a good policy. And so you're going to have people who are going to push back no matter what you do. When you come in and you change patronage and nepotism and all the things that are unethical, there's always going to be pushback. But even the supervisor needs to look at himself because he has a company car that he's taking home. And if it's a company use, maybe he should leave it parked at the job and use it only during the day when he's working.
And what about his response to his tire being slashed and coming back to the office and blaming the employees?
To address what you first said just now, obviously, I don't know if it's unethical, but it's definitely poor management skills.
Correct.
Unethical, yeah, probably not.
Yeah.
But I'm going to go back to the initial thing,
Please do.
which was when we look at things like that, we say, well, it's not a problem until it's a problem. And as leaders, it's our responsibility to have the foresight to see what could become a problem. Therefore, him slashing the take-home policy or the past practice is a good idea.
Well, and being proactive is never wrong, right? I mean, I practice family law, so they'll tell you we're reactive, not proactive. You can't determine what's going to happen in a family, right? But in actual municipalities, you are going to try to stop things before they happen. You're going to try to implement rules that make everyone safe, everyone equal, and you want to have proactive responses. That's where you get transparency to your constituents, and you get where everyone is on the same playing field and no one is treated special, instead of reactive where people are coming to you with all the complaints, or somebody has injured themselves with municipal equipment at home, or someone has lost a $2,000 hand tool. Not all hand tools are hammers that cost $30, right? So some things are much more expensive, and maybe they can't even afford to replace it because they're low man on the totem pole and don't make enough money to replace what they broke. We have one comment in the back.
I was just going to say that he's borderline creating a hostile work environment.
Yes. Yes. Agree. Agree. Any other ethical issues that you saw that I didn't bring up? What about the destruction of the public property? So if they didn't bring it back or it was broken and there was nothing done about it, he just looked the other way, the old supervisor. Isn't that an ethical violation? What should he have done? Are we allowed to take it out of their paycheck? No. So if they can't afford to pay you back, are you going to sue them? Take them to small claims on behalf of the municipality? It just sets a bad precedent, right? So that's why we're proactive, not reactive. Because how do you get someone to pay for that? If you can't take it out of their paycheck, then what happens? And then what about making procedures? Like the HR person should be maybe the one making the procedures, not the supervisor, so that it's not deemed that someone new is coming in and just changing everything. It's just one set policy from the top down. It could vary from department to department. Who agrees? Who thinks HR should set the rules for everybody? Who is not going to participate? Everybody should be raising their hand. It's a fine line, all of these things. That's why they're the discussion case studies, because there's a lot of gray area in what do we do? What is ethical? What is not ethical? What is right on the gray area where, yeah, if we eat it and drink it, we could take it home, but okay, about a handle of Tito's, you can drink that. Like, there is a fine line. And a lot of stuff is gray area. Yes, people give their garbage man gifts at Christmas. Some garbage men are municipal employees, some are private employees. You know?
That I want to make sure everyone understands is what we're doing here right now is what is happening in the ethical training with your employees. And one of the biggest outcomes I have seen in those training sessions is the discussion of where there needs to be a policy or where there's a misunderstanding. And with this training, we provide a place where employees can ask a question. I thought I could borrow a tool. I didn't understand that there could be liability. I didn't understand that a citizen could come and cause us an issue. So I just want to plug the training, and in your community, if you don't have trainers yet identified, please do so we can get there and be with your employees and have these discussions.
And also on case study 4, why we provided it was for you to be able to go back to your coworkers who maybe were not able to come today in your municipality and show them this is the kind of stuff we're doing, and try to talk about what the issues are in that case study so that you can make them aware of what we do here and invite them to come next year. This is free. We provide everything to the municipalities based on their annual membership dues. So we train the trainer for free. We do the board and commission training. We do all of those things for free. We have the summit for free. Everyone is invited to the summit, the public. The trainings are generally just for the municipalities. So be aware of that. We don't train private sector people because that's not what our mission is. So we have a joint board of delegates that are made of elected officials who are our governing body. And so we train people who are working in municipalities. If they are going to be an elected official, are they allowed to join the trainings? Because they will be working in a municipality?
Yeah.
So if they're running?
Yeah. I mean, I think that elected officials have other venues to get some ethical training. What's that organization, Cal?
AIM.
AIM can provide that. But I know in our town, we open up our training to whoever is interested, whether they're an elected official or whether they're an employee. You have to keep in mind there could be some people not wanting to bring up issues when there's one of their leaders in the room. Those kinds of things need to be dealt with, but we try to make it open to everybody.
Thank you. And again, I would like to thank our panel. Dan had to leave, he had a flight to catch, but I would really like to thank Lee and Brian for coming and sharing their wisdom with us today. I would really like to thank all of my Shared Ethics colleagues for coming and helping me put this on. And Julie made our beautiful slideshow, and Cal for starting this wonderful program that helps our communities become more ethical, more transparent, and have the training they need to make the proper decisions for everyone. And if Cal wasn't here, this wouldn't be here. So thank you, Cal. On your table, there are evaluation forms. We use those forms every year to help improve the program. So just so you know, as little as 5 years ago, we did not serve bacon. And guess what we have now based on our evaluation forms, which is why every year we mention bacon, because it was a big hot topic one year. Didn't matter what we said out loud, everyone wanted bacon. So please, if there's bacon left, take it home. Grab a napkin. I don't care. Take the bacon. Please complete your evaluation. You can leave it on the table. We will grab it. We take your feedback seriously, and we use it to ensure our annual ethics summits are meaningful and worthwhile. So to close our event, I'd like to express our sincerest gratitude. Thank you to the Times for their unending support. So we had... he left at 10, but we had Pete Doherty here earlier taking photos. There was a reporter here to make an article about our event in the paper. They have generously always done our ad for this program. And then they also, of course, charge us, but they print our ethics pledge, our candidates who pledge in the paper. And so we really appreciate the Times always partnering with us for this program and putting in the ads. So if you saw it in the paper, the Times generously gave us those ads for this program. And thank you to all of you for taking time out of your busy lives to support ethics in our community. I'm especially grateful for your engagement in our event and look forward to seeing you next year. So please remember to fill out your evaluation forms. And if your community is not already a member of SEAC, please reach out to your leaders and encourage them to join. Be safe and have a great day. Joe, you're the best.